session of this program, which is Independent Directors, Risk and Rewards. So let's first see what we are going to discuss today in this session. Yoshida, can we? Yeah, thank you. So we will begin with an overview of the independent directors, what they do, how their roles differ from other board members, the responsibilities, the challenges, and what you should, consider, the factors you should consider before accepting an ID position. Then we'll be having a regulatory framework for independent directors, where we are going to cover the eligibility, appointment process, remuneration, training, familiarization requirements that generally apply to the independent directors. Then we have oversight of a related party transactions. We'll be looking into like independent directors has a critical role in reviewing and approving related party transactions and how they can safeguard principle of fairness and protect minority shareholders in these high risk situations. And then we'll be having a practical perspectives. We'll be covering real world case studies, examples where oversight by the independent directors has succeeded, and draw out the practical lessons for modern boots. So, before we begin, I would, like to know who all are in this room, either, serving as the independent director on any board. Is there anyone who is serving as an independent director? Okay. If you're planning to, get into the position of independent director, what do you think? What can be challenges or your concerns as an independent director? If someone wants to share, what do you feel? What can be the challenge or concern once you'll join as an independent director? Understanding the long-term vision of the company and current readiness of the management. Yes, yes. Anil, this is actually the one of the factor which we should consider before joining as the independent director. We are going to cover this. Understanding the business context and current risk. Yes, correct, correct. Maintaining the transparency. Yes, Nilesh, correct. Risk involved. So, actually, yes, we should consider these factors before joining as an independent director. And we are going to cover this in the session today. So, let's start the session. So, learners independent before the word director is not just the nomenclature. It is actually more than that. It signals a very specific kind of a role on the board and accountability they carry towards all stakeholders. But before we jump into the definition of who qualifies as an independent director, let's discuss why and how this concept as independent director came into the picture. So in 1950s or 60s, the boardroom used to have a handful of individuals, maybe founders, family members, long-term advisors, basically who all know each other well. There is no real outsider in the room, and if there's an extra chair, it's meant for another trusted friend of that circle, not for someone not for someone who's independent who might ask the questions or difficult question or who might question their decisions. But as business grew, companies got listed. Companies started using the public money. That quiet boardroom, that quiet private boardroom, came under the lens of the public. So every time a big corporate scandal hit, the same uncomfortable question came up. Came up. What was the board doing? And that question slowly but surely change what we accept, what we expect from boards and from directors who are supposed to be independent. So, in different regions, in different jurisdictions, this independent directors' journey traveled in their own way. I'll start with US. So, in US, from 1970s onwards, regulators started gently pushing companies to bring in outside directors who were not the part of the management. But initially, it was more, of the soft guidance than a strict law. But after a series of major corporate scandals, the tone changed, and which led to actually the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which moved independent directors, especially on the audit committees, right to the center of the corporate oversight. Then what happened in UK? So the shift happened more through principles and best practices in UK rather than heavy legislation. It began with the Cadbury report in early 1990s, and later the UK Corporate Governance Code came into the picture. So these framework encouraged boards to have a strong presence of the non-executive and independent directors. Then UK followed a principle called comply or explain approach, which means that companies either follow the rules, standards, sorry, I won't say rules, the standards, or had to openly explain it to the shareholders why they are not following them. Then in Europe, many countries already, worked with the stakeholder model. We discussed this in corporate governance session also. The two-tier board, a management board for running the business, running the day-to-day business, and then supervisory board to oversee it. As European markets integrated and global investors came in, these systems began adding the ideas of the independent director and independent committees. But they didn't replace that stakeholder model. They just fine-tuned the independence within their existing structure. And then in India and many other emerging markets, the starting point was very different. Boards were often dominated by the promoters and families, but with the liberalization and increased access to the domestic and international capital market, expectations around governance changed sharply. And through various committees set up by the stock exchanges, they began to insist on having the independent directors on their board. And over the time, the law stepped to define who can be called as the independent, how long they can serve on the board, and what are their duties they owe. So if we compress this long journey, we can say that the independent directors has efficiently lived into three phases. One, the respected outsider phase, then compliance guardian phase, and now strategic steward phase, where an independent director is expected to bring not only independence of mind but also a deep understanding of business, risk, people, technology, and society, and to help boards, become better, more balanced, and more sustainable decisions they can take. Learners, now actually let's understand who is an independent director in today's corporate environment. So independent directors are seen now as the guardian of governance, or maybe protector of the minority shareholders, or critical friends who provide constructive criticism to the executive team of the board, or maybe called as the champions of ethical conduct. But if we look into this technical definition, an independent director is someone who has no direct or indirect relationship with the company, its promoter, or its employees that could compromise their independence. This means they are not the part of the promoter group, they are not on the payroll, and they don't have the material business dealings or family linkages that can bias their decisions in favor of the promoters. Secondly, independent director is not involved in day-to-day activities or operations of the company. As an ID, you are not running business units. That's the role of the executives and the management. Your role as an ID is fundamentally oversight. You sit at the board level, you look at the bigger picture, and you question whether the strategy, the controls, or the culture are aligned with the company's long term interest and legal obligations. Third, and the most important duty, they bring an independent, unbiased perspective to the board decisions. Because you are not tied to the management, not part of the promoter family, not dependent on the company for your primary livelihood from that company. So you can ask questions which others may avoid. You can challenge assumptions in the proposals, and you can also offer an external view which is in the best interest of the company and its stakeholders. So, this independence of mind is what raises the quality, depth, and objectivity of the board's decision making. And fourth is like independent director protects the stakeholders' interest through fair oversight. So by applying all these 3 points which we just discussed, independent director is able to protect the stakeholders' interest through fair oversight. So, learners, tell me something. If we talk about the stakeholders, what do you think? What can be the expectations of these stakeholders from an independent director of the company? Suppose if we take the example of the investor or shareholders, what do you think? What are their expectations from the independent director? I'll repeat the question. If if there is a stakeholder who is the investor or shareholder, what are their expectations from an independent director of the company to be voice of reason on major decisions? Yes, yes. This especially for the minority shareholders. Challenges the status quo and ensures proper governance. Correct. Clarifications. Okay. Providing transparency to all stakeholders. Unbiased decision making. Okay. I think you all have covered all the points. So Anil says maintaining the fair transparency, the way business are operating, no personal interest in the company's operations and its financials, ensuring long-term growth for higher terminal value. Correct, Anil. Then it says subject matter expert sometimes for niche sale. Correct. This is applicable maybe for technology. So yes, you have covered correctly. Then, if we talk about the regulators, what can be the regulators' expectations from the independent director? Any idea? If regulators have made some rules to be, to bring independent director on the board, why they have thought? Risk oversight, independent voice, yes. Compliance, yes. Companies adhering to the stipulated regulations, raising red flags in the current large private bank cases. Okay, correct. Hold the board true and honest. Be an invigilist of transparency of companies complies to regulations and rules. Yes, and corporate governance. Correct, regulators. But these are external stakeholders. Let's talk about internal stakeholder. Maybe employees. What do you think? What can be the expectations of the employees from the independent director? Actually, most of them would not know them. Okay. Do the employees even have visibility to an independent director? It is on the websites these days. When directors are appointed, it is like, posted on the websites, stock exchanges, ethical practices adopted by the management, whistleblowing policies are implemented. Very correct, Anil. Whistleblower is actually very important. They look to them to keep a safe whistleblower system where staff can raise concerns without fear of some revenge, retaliation. Okay. Okay. So, to summarize this, an independent director is truly outside voice on the board, someone who has no close ties or dependencies on the company or its promoters, and who stays, out of daily operations of the company so that they can focus fully on oversight and judgment. Okay, let's go to rules and challenges. Now we understand who is an independent director. We need to now focus on the roles and as well as the challenges of the independent directors. Why it is one of the most challenging positions in the boardroom. Yes, Anil, promoters play a big role. Uh, uh, who comes to an on board as an independent director, but shareholders in most of the jurisdictions, shareholders have the power to appoint the independent director. Okay. So, why independent directors are critical for the board? So, although we have touched on why independent directors are so critical for the board, but it's worth pausing here to connect the dots. As we all know, that the companies are operating in a highly regulated environment with frequent changes in the laws, disclosure norms, and enforcement actions. And at the same time, companies are operating in increasingly complex financial and digital ecosystems, such as complex group structures, technology embedded in every part of the businesses. And above all this, companies have a reputational and ESG pressures also, where it is expected by the companies to be responsible, transparent, sustainable, and not just the profitable. So, looking into all these kind of situations, having only insiders around the board table is quite risky. And company needs people whose primary job is to ask the questions and protect the integrity of the system. So that's where independent directors come in, who boost the governance by first strengthening the board credibility and stakeholders' confidence through visibly independent oversight, which practically helps in easier access to the capital, better terms for the lenders, trying eliminating regulatory non-compliances and creating a strong brand value for the company in the market. Further, inside the boardroom, independent directors fundamentally change the quality, depth, and the objectivity of the decisions by asking a difficult questions like, what if this growth doesn't increases the way we are expecting? What risk are we not seeing here? Is like, if there is any transaction, is this fair to the minority shareholders? So independent directors just not monitor it, they raise the bar on how well the board thinks and decides. And then one of the most important reason why independent directors role is critical is identifying and preventing conflicts of interest before they compromise the integrity. In fact, in many companies, especially promoter-led entities, there is a natural concentration of the power. So, especially in these type of companies, independent directors question the transaction where promoters or their related entities stands to get the benefit. They insist on arm's length terms and proper process approval for the related party transactions, and then they ensure that minority shareholders are not having disadvantages from those type of transactions. So effectively, we can say that independent directors act as a first line of defense against the misuse of the company's resources and promoters' influence. Further, independent directors help reduce a company's exposure to the fraud and unethical behavior by ensuring strong checks and balances through rigorous audit committee oversight, robust internal controls, and the continuous monitoring. And then, as we know, boards today, are under pressure for quarterly numbers, market expectations, and even sometimes promoter expectations, which are actually short-term in nature. And that time, independent directors help in molding the conversation back to the long-term value creation. So learners, if you as an independent director effectively play all these type of roles, the company will end up with more credible, trusted, and resilient board that commands higher confidence from the regulators, investors, lenders, and other stakeholders through visibly strong governance. Now, I would like to ask you, before we get into the challenges, what do you think? What can be the biggest challenge for the independent directors who face today, and why? Learners, so Vijay says they would not have the influence apart from raising dissent notes. Okay. Learners, can we have that one word, maybe the biggest challenge? Legal liability, pressure from the promoters. Okay. Any more responses? Okay, no problem. So let's look at the challenges and safeguards on the next slide and see whether your prediction lands in one of those buckets or maybe adds a new angle. Boardroom politics, yes. Where the ethical values are matched, yes. So we have the challenges now and we have the, safeguard recommendations also. Let's look into it. So first is information asymmetry, selective disclosure. So IDs are expected to sign off on the strategy, risk, and financial, yet they don't run the day-to-day business and depend heavily on what management chooses to put in board packs and presentations. So this means they may see a filtered version of the reality. Issues can be downplayed, delayed, or framed in a way that makes them look less serious than they actually are. So to handle this kind of challenge, you as an ID should push for early circulation of a detailed board papers. So you have time to read, to think, to prepare for the questions instead of reacting on the spot. Then you should have direct access to the internal audit, statutory auditors, and other control functions, which allows you to hear unfiltered views on controls, compliances, red flags without management sitting in the room. Then real-time risk and compliance dashboard at board level should be there so that directors can track key indicators like breaches, losses, whistleblower complaints on a real-time basis instead of waiting for a periodic board meeting. So, next we have the promoter dominance and erosion of true independence. So, on papers, many boards meet the requirement for a certain number of independent directors in practice. But the real power can still rest almost entirely with the promoters, as you all said. So, that influence can shape who gets appointed, who chairs critical committees, and how difficult conversations are handled in the room. So, how to handle these kinds of situations? So ensure that audit committee and nomination remuneration committee are generally independent, both in composition and how they operate on sensitive matters, maybe like related party transactions or remunerations. Then ensure a formal recording your dissent in the minutes. If independent directors disagree, if you disagree or have reservation, then it should be recorded properly in the minutes, which is going to protect you if there is a scrutiny by the regulator at the later stage. And then hold a closed door meetings of the independent directors only. In fact, in India, we have the regulation that the independent director should meet annually. Uh, the only independent directors meeting should be there. So next is the high legal, regulatory, and personal liability risk. So independent directors carry significant regulatory exposure even though they don't execute the transactions themselves and depend on the management for the information and implementation. So when something goes wrong, they are often pulled into the investigations on the basis of failure of oversight. So how you're going to protect yourself in this kind of situations? You should have directors and officers insurance, which should cover. There should be an enough coverage and appropriate scope to protect the independent directors, but the independent directors who are actually acting in good faith. Then independent directors should take the regular trainings on legal and regulatory liabilities. So they should understand where the law and regulators are especially unforgiving, like suppose like in RPTs, in disclosure lapses, misstatements, governance failures. And then they are able to pay more attention in those sensitive areas. Then, for complex and high risk approvals, the board should seek an independent expert opinion. And as well as the questions raised by the independent directors should be clearly captured in the minutes to show informed, good faith decision making if it is ever challenged. Then we have limited understanding of technology, cyber, and AI risk. So many independent directors are actually seasoned professionals, maybe in finance, law, operations. But today's risk landscape is dominated by technology, cyber threats, data privacy, and now AI-driven decision making, which we discussed in the fourth session also. So without a basic fluency in these topics, boards can find themselves relying majorly on the management and and they'll be unable to properly challenge it or even understand the true risk profile of the digital and cyber exposures. So to safeguard yourself from these kinds of issues, you should have a mandatory annual training on cybersecurity, digital risk, AI governance, so that questions in the boardroom become more sharper and more relevant over the time. Then deliberately bringing at least one tech or cyber expert onto the board as an independent director. What how this will help, there should be an in-house expertise who can help in translating highly technical issues into the normal governance language and risk conversations, which the full board is able to understand. Then running board level simulations of cyber incidents or data breaches so that you are prepared if some breach happens. Then we have the whistleblower and ethics oversight. Whistleblower systems and ethics framework often provide the earliest signal that something is wrong, but they can easily be weakened if they sit too close to the management and if they lack independent oversight. Because if you see only high level sanitized summaries, you may miss some patterns, delays, or evidences of retaliation against those who speak up. So how we should resolve this? the audit committee led by the independent directors owns oversight of a whistleblower and ethics mechanism, receiving structured updates on number of cases, number of allegations, patterns across the organizations, and reporting the key points onward to the full board. Then employees should have access to the independent reporting channels with clear no retaliation protections, including options that bypass inline. And then the board should periodically review not just the individual cases, but the overall effectiveness and the trends of the whistleblower systems. So board should see if there's recurring cases or the patterns that needs board attention. So, but learners, once you step into the role of the independent directors, you should expect that these challenges and obstacles may come along the way. But that's exactly why you need clear safeguards in place. The key is to actively push for these protections at the board level so you can manage those risks sensibly and still perform your role effectively. Okay. So let me start with a simple question. If two people sit on the same board, attend the same meetings, and read the same board papers, why is one called as a director and other as an independent director? What's the real difference? So by the end of this section, you will see that an independent director is not just another director. It's a completely different mindset, risk profile, and responsibility. So let's start with the first difference, the relationship with the company. So most regular directors, executives, or in many cases non-executive directors, they usually have a material relationship with the companies. They may be employees, part of the promoter group, or otherwise linked to them. But an independent director, by definition, as we discussed, must have no indirect or direct relationship with the company, its promoters, or its employees. So think about this, like if your salary, promotions, and future in the company depend on the promoter, how an independent will how independent will be my decision in the boardroom. Then we have a primary role running the business versus guarding the governance. So, a director's job is to drive business performance and execute the strategy. Is okay. So, director's role is to drive the business performance and execute the strategy. They are responsible for the growth, margins, market share, and execution. But an independent director's job is to safeguard the governance, fairness, and stakeholders' interest. They are the moral compass in the boardroom. Then let's go to the operational involvement. Directors are deeply involved in. Learner, could you please mute yourself? Okay. So, for the operational involvement, directors are deeply involved in day-to-day operations or strategic execution. They sign the deals, hire people, approve pricing, run the projects. But in the independent director, on the other hand, are not supposed to be in day-to-day operations. They only have the oversight role. Lana, I would request you to please mute yourself. Okay. Now, let's go to the decision-making style. How to do it versus should we do it? So, directors have a participatory, execution-oriented style of decision-making. Their questions are how fast, what resources, which team. But independent directors are oversight-driven and questioning-oriented. Their questions are, is it fair? What are the risks? Is it in the stakeholders' interest? Oh, one second.
Could you please mute yourself? Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. Then we have information access. Directors have direct, continuous, detailed access to the information. They are in the management loop every day. But independent directors often depend on what management chooses to disclose through board papers and presentations, creating a real risk of information asymmetry, which we just discussed. Then we have risk exposure, liability in both roles, but for the different reasons. Directors face regulatory risk mainly because they execute it. If something goes wrong in implementation or operation, they are on the line. But independent directors face regulatory risk even without an execution role. They can be pulled up for the failure of the oversight, for not asking the questions, for not probing the red flags, not dissenting where they should. Then we have fraud compliances, failures, which is execution versus oversight. Directors have direct accountability. They were part of the actual decisions and processes where the failure occurred. Independent directors are held accountable if they did not exercise proper oversight. They ignored the warning signs, did not insist on explanations, or simply went along with the majority. And then the remuneration, who gets what. So directors, especially executive directors, are typically paid salary, bonuses, ESOPs, and commissions, but independent directors usually receive sitting fees and commissions. No salary and generally no ESOPs for the independent oversight. So to wrap this up, a director is inside the engine room, building, driving, and steering the business. But an independent director stands at the door of the engine room, watching, questioning, and making sure the engine doesn't blow up the company or its stakeholders, or maybe its reputation. Okay. Learners, this is actually a very interesting slide. Yes, Frank?
A question on the use of the word commission in the previous slide. What is meant by that? Is it commission in the same context for dependent and independent directors?
Commission is actually based on, actually, commission's definition is very different in cases. I mean, it's a case to case basis. Commission is provided.
Is
It
that
can be different
incentive
for
driven?
both the, it can be different for the independent and executive director.
Would that be incentive driven? Is that the idea?
Yes, yes.
And that's not a conflict in the independent director's role or potential conflict?
So
Not that.
that's what,
Sorry, Bhavya, continue.
yes, Kiran? Yes,
Continue,
Kiran?
Bhavya. I was just adding to what Frank said, like it is profit link commissions, and whatever the profit the company incurs in 1 year, on the basis of that, that commission is given. So that is not linked to any specific project or any specific incentive in which there can be a conflict of interest.
So to rephrase that, there's no potential conflict based on a bottom line incentive.
Yes, in this sense, in the commission sense, for the independent director, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It's actually just the part of the profit which is generally approved by shareholders also. So that's why there's no conflict.
Great, thank you. And I can see with the shareholders' involvement how that might be ameliorated
Yes,
or eliminated. Thank you.
yes. If shareholders' approval is there, then obviously they are the owners. They can approve the same. Yes, Anil?
Yeah, Bhavya, so looking at the slide, is there a difference between the functioning of an executive director and a non-executive director? Because what the slide shows the difference between executive oblique non-executive and independent director, but what's the core difference between the executive and non-executive director? Because earlier I thought probably non-executive is almost similar like a independent director, but it doesn't look like that from the slide.
So generally practically what happens is executive directors are the key managerial personals, like whole-time director, managing director. But non-executive directors, especially in India, they are not the KMPs. They are non-executive directors generally are the promoters. But if there is a person who is non-executive director and who is an independent, that will be considered as an independent director if they fill all the eligible conditions, which Kirat will discuss with us.
All right. So what you're saying is basically the non-executive director can become an independent director, but not vice versa, right?
Correct, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, learners, this is actually a very interesting slide. So before saying yes to an independent director's role, you just don't look at the title first, look at the territory you are stepping into. Imagine this, like one wrong board who can damage 20 years of reputation, or the right board can multiply it. So, what should you check before you accept it? So, on this slide, we are not asking, will they appoint you? In fact, we are actually asking vice versa, should you appoint them as your board? So, let's see the factors before joining as an independent director. The first is financial performance. Is the house financially sound? First, look at the financial performance of the company, not just for the year, but over a whole cycle. If the balance sheet is weak or cash flows are shaky, then maybe as an independent director, you are walking into the high risk zone from day one. Then, second is brand image. Do you want this logo next to your name? Look at the brand image of the company, how the market, media, regulator, and employees perceive it. A strong brand, which with a clean history, boosts your own credibility, but a tainted name may pull you down with it, even if you have done nothing wrong. Then we have profile and background of the board, who are like people, peers who are sitting with you. So study the profile and the background of the board of the directors. These are your future colleagues. Just check, do they have a history of good governance, diverse skills, and real independence, or they are just a symbolic names aligned to the promoters. Then we have profile and background of the promoters, who is actually really driving the bus. Access the profile and the background of the promoters, their reputation, past dealings, attitude towards governance and transparency. Then we have organizational structure. What really happens when the camera is actually off? So look at the organizational culture, how decisions are made, how bad news is handled, how people are treated. Is it open, transparent, and ethical, or fear driven, or maybe promoter centric? Culture will decide whether you are heard or just present in the room. Then we have governance structure. It's just the board. Board is just the rubber stamp, or actually the real board. Examine the overall governance structure of the management, maybe through like board committees, independence reporting lines, internal controls, whistleblower mechanisms. Then the last one, the synergy with your profile, experience, and interests. Is this your really your area? Check the synergy between the company's objectives and your own profile, experience, and interest. If your expertise does not match the company's business or strategic direction, you may struggle to add value, and yet you will still carry all the fiduciary responsibilities. So we have a small activity. So imagine you have received an appointment letter to join as an independent director for some company, maybe for some listed company. What do you going to consider from all these 7 points? What are first, the most important, first three most important points for you? You can post your answers in the chat box. Is it financial performance, brand, profile and background of the promoters and the directors, then maybe the culture or the overall governance structure, synergies. Learners, can we have the responses? What do you think? What can be the first three most important points for you? Okay, we have the answer now. Synergy, brand, financials, and organizational culture in that order. Okay, Vijay. Then we have 615, governance structure, financial performance, fifth, organizational culture, brand image, file of the background. Okay. Seventh, synergy. Then we
I think
have
it's
promoters on.
difficult to choose the top three ones. All of them are very important key factors.
Actually, all are very important, but I mean, still we would recommend go for the financials first. That's the most important. Go for the background of the promoters as well as the directors, and the most important, the synergy. That is actually very important. Whether your objective, your experience is aligning with the company's objective or not. Okay, so to discuss about the regulatory framework of the independent directors, I would pass the baton to Kirat, sorry.
Thank you, Bhavya. Thank you for setting such a powerful context on the independence and the true role of independent directors. The base you said clearly highlighted that the independence is not just about a designation, but it's about a mindset and the ability to stand firm and truly impartial when it truly matters, like we were discussing during the employees, to take a stand for them. So now, as we move forward to section 2 of this session, let's take a moment to think about what it means to step into the shoes of an independent director itself. In this segment, we will not just talk about what the rules say, but why they exist and what is the importance and how they vary from different jurisdictions and how we will play out them in the real life through our stories and your stories. If you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and let us know. So moving ahead, the first key area we will discuss in this section is the eligibility criteria for independent directors. These requirements ensure that only and only truly independent directors and the qualified individuals join the board, focusing on their exceptional professional background, any conflicts of interest, any absence of conflicts of interest, and compliance with the regulatory norms. So before we get into the answers and before we get started, can you guys name any 2 or 3 elements that you think that are usually required for someone to be eligible to become an independent director? Like any basic or any 2 3 that comes to your mind in the first instance. Any 2 or 3 elements that you think any individual is usually required to be eligible to become an independent director. It is required to become an independent director. Expertise, experience, knowledge, experience, similar mindset, sound management context, synergy, as Bhavya just mentioned, overall experience. All good, all correct. So, great job. Let's now move on to we have already covered a significant part of it. And yeah, Anil is saying requisite knowledge, either functional, like marketing, finance, very true, a niche or an expertise in area of the company's operations. That is very important that the individual we are proposing it has an expertise in what company operates, because he will be able to relate more, he will be able to take better decisions, and he can be a better director for the company with that experience. So now that we are on same page, let's take a closer look and break down what actually goes into the eligibility requirements. So there are three main levels that we have noted down here. The first level is all about the prerequisites of the appointment. This is essentially, I would say, your entry ticket to the role of independent director. This stage covers the fundamental conditions that must be satisfied before someone can be considered for the position of independent director. Moving to the second level, that is all about the soft skills and the personal attributes of any individual we are proposing to appoint in our company. These are as important as the basic prerequisites because they determine how effectively an independent director can contribute to the board. Qualities like integrity and, as you said, experience, expertise, independent thinking, sound judgment, all of it play a very crucial role in fulfilling the responsibilities of this position. The third and the last level is technical and regulatory criteria, which is very important and which we have to fulfill before we become an independent director. These requirements are essential to ensure that independent directors are not only eligible but also fully compliant with the law of the country or with the law of all the legal and regulatory standards. Now that we have outlined the three main heads of the eligibility, let's discuss each of these in detail to understand what they really mean for any aspiring independent director. Thank you. Moving forward, let's understand the first level, that is the prerequisites of appointment of an independent director. Interestingly, a majority of these prerequisites that as you can see on screen are also required for anyone who wishes to even serve as a director, executive or non-executive, on a company's board, but a majority of them can be relate to the director, but majorly the non-executive and the independent directors. So the first one is that the identity of every prospective independent director must be formally verified, such as through any company house in the UK or a director identification number in India, so that that person can be allotted that and person can be confirmed to be a director in that country. Second is directors must not be legally disqualified for reasons such as fraud or bankruptcy or any court order and any related disqualifications. Next is that the number of the companies in which a person is appointed as director must not exceed the statutory cap of the number of directorship it can hold. Like for example, in India, no more than 20 companies, a person cannot hold directorship in more than 20 companies with a maximum in 10 public companies. And for listed companies, best practice in the UK and Europe generally limits directorships to the 4 to 5 listed boards max, so that it can give the time properly to each company and can maintain his independence as well. Next is that the candidate must be registered in the official data bank and may need to pass a test to demonstrate their knowledge. We will understand the applicability of this point and this practice in detail later, like what test do we have to pass. Last but not the least, formal declaration to the company that the individual meets the criteria of independence. It is important to note that this is not a one-time compliance that the person says I am independent and no other declarations or confirmations are required in the later stage. The person has to be independent like all the time. He is an independent director in the company. So to conclude, in simple terms, first level answers the question that is the candidate legally fit and available to take up the role of an independent director. Moving to level 2, this is where the independence shift from compliance to character. I want to add on with experience what we witness these days, and I'm going to take you back to the corporate governance session where we discuss about the role of the board in sustainable value creation and its impact on the overall investors in the market. Because today the tone of these conversations has changed dramatically. Like in one case, a candidate with credentials was almost finalized, with an impeccable credentials was almost finalized, but the process stalled when the board mapped its evolving needs. Like, what are the needs of the company, and can the independent director match the needs of the company? They realized that he was not a great fit. They needed somebody who can deeply understand the company's operations, the company's vision, that for example in this case was ESG and digital risk. So that person was not a great fit because he didn't he was not able to fit in that company. So attributes such as financial and business acumen, regulatory awareness, digital and cyber sensitivity, and ethical leadership collectively determine how effective an independent director truly is. So through this, we understand that an independent director must have a balance, and should balance independence with collaboration, like asking necessary questions and taking challenging decisions, and making proper decisions without disrupting the governance, the corporate governance. So the first level ensures that the person should be eligible, while the second level ensures that the person should be effective also. Effectiveness should also be there, and the connection should also be there. Synergy should also be there with the company. And both of them are essential for meaningful independent directorship. So now, building to level 2, let me have a quick chat with you. Based on your practical experience and the soft skills we just discussed, what other soft skills do you think are absolutely essential to preserve independence in reality? Like, you can mention like all of this if you think these are only the list of soft skills, and if you have any other additions, we are happy to hear. Or if anybody wants to share their experience on the personal attributes and the soft skills. Integrity, confidence, yes.
Confidence is actually very important when you are dissenting to the promoters.
Yeah, if you are making a decision and you yourself are not confident for that decision, then
Yeah.
how will the management agree to it?
Yes,
Very true.
yes.
Mental fitness, correct. This is very true in the real time. Good management perspective, general management perspective. Connect the dots, yes. Difficult question, as
Management,
we discussed,
yes.
challenging
People
decision.
management is very important.
Yes, comfortable with different opinions. Yes. So independent director have to drive all of this. Yes, these insights are incredible. So
In
you
fact, Kirat, I would like
yeah.
to add one thing. I was reading one article today where the chairperson of the stock exchange, SEBI, said that rules are there. Independent directors should do the interrogation. He specifically pointed out interrogation word. Interrogation on the information. I've just read today. So
Yeah,
just thought
that
to
is
share
very
it.
important because
Yes.
just bare rules are of no use for the company.
Yes, yes,
We
yes,
have to interrogate if they are implemented in real life as well.
yes. They clearly he clearly said that generally companies are compliant with the constitution of the composition of the board, but it will become effective only if independent directors are interrogating.
Sure.
Yeah, you can continue.
Yeah. So moving forward to the level 3, you should thank me. Yeah, thank you. So that is these pointers, these level 3 technical points are beyond just the foundational prerequisites and personal attributes, and independent directors must also satisfy all of these technical and regulatory requirements. These criteria are designed to ensure that independent director possesses the necessary expertise and the regulatory compliance, independence to effectively fulfill their responsibilities, or we can say oversight responsibilities. So let's begin with the integrity and expertise, because independence starts with personal credibility. As somebody just mentioned, that confidence is required. If the person personally is credible, if the person is confident for their decision, so that is the one of the most technical and the important point that they should have in themselves to take a independent decision. An independent director must not only have the expertise but also the confidence and the credibility to apply it without any influence, like taking challenging decisions as well. From there, the law draws a clear line that an independent director cannot be a promoter and even not related to one in the company or any of the group companies like holding or subsidiary or associate, because they are interlinked. This separation is very crucial to ensure that the oversight remains objective and free from any influence. So the circle then expands to the financial independence, that is pecuniary relationships. This means that the prospective candidate or their relatives must not have any financial dealings with the company except for less significant permitted by law. So there, as per different jurisdictions, there is a certain amount of transactions that are permitted. Other than that, you cannot have any financial dealings with the company. Next is that neither the individual nor the relatives are permitted to own any securities in the company or its holding, again the subsidiary and associate company, except the minor dealings under the Indian law. For Indian law, there are that the relatives may hold up to the limit of INR 50 lakhs or 2% of the shareholding. So that is what is prescribed in India, and it varies from different jurisdiction. Like what is the minimum and maximum limit that the person can invest. Next we have is that the individual and the relative shall confirm that they have not extended any loan or advance, provided any guarantee or created any security in the favor of company. Any of these transactions are not allowed. This also applies to the company's group holdings as well and the promoters as well. And that this will confirm that no financial obligation or contingent liabilities exist. Like if there is no assets, there should not be any liabilities as well. Next come is association and employment. The individual or any of their relatives must not have any close association with the company or its group entities, or even as a part of any legal, consulting, or professional advisory firm, that they should not be connected, engaged by the company or its group companies. Also, we also look at the voting power and the management influence. This is allowed up to certain limits in every jurisdiction. So that this ensures that the shareholding or the key managerial roles do not tilt decision making due to the any influence from the company. Finally, the framework closes the loop by examining the relationships across the company and its group companies, ensuring that the independence is maintained within the group. It mainly includes the person, neither like himself itself and the relatives itself cannot hold the position of a key managerial person, because that person will be related to the company and then he cannot be an independent director. For this we have certain time limit or cooling off period, which we can say like in every jurisdiction there's a cooling period for say ranging from 3 to 5 years, that if the person has left the KMP position, key managerial position, then the person can be appointed as an independent director. With this, that taken together all of the above mentioned points, these key provisions form a comprehensive framework ensuring that the independence is safeguarded in all the aspects and from every angle rather than just one single point. And with this insights, say financial or employment connections can help you anticipate the risk. Like if the person is financially involved with the company, you know that the person is not the right fit for being an independent director. So I would suggest make informed decisions and maintain robust governance practices all the time, which will position you itself in a more confident and effective leader in your role. So now in the upcoming slide, let's understand all of this in an illustrative form. So the scenario is like you can put your answers in the chat box. Which of the below mentioned scenarios will impact the independence of Mr. A? First is the association with a group company. Second is if he is or she is a close relative to the promoters. Next is serve simultaneously on boards of companies with cross holdings. Next is that he holds more than 2% of the voting power in the company itself. Himself, sorry. I guess we all are on the same page. The answer is correct. All four of them. All of the scenarios will impact the independence of Mr. A, and he cannot be an independent director in the company. Great. Yeah. So let's move forward to one of the most interesting sections of this discussion, that is terms and appointment. So far, we have spoken about the role and importance of the independent directors. Now, this slide sets the context for how different jurisdictions actually operationalize independent directors through their tenure limits and their appointment thresholds and the governance structures. And that's exactly what we will explore in the next slide, a comparative matrix covering India and key global jurisdictions. So we can move forward and have a look. Yes. This slide represents a comparative view across 5 jurisdictions, that is India, United Kingdom, Vietnam, Singapore, and Canada. We will walk through this one parameter at a time, which is on the x-axis. First is the minimum number of directors, and first is the minimum number of directors, starting with the minimum number of independent directors in India. For listed company, at least 1/3 of the board must comprise independent directors. For certain class of companies having paid up share capital of 10 crore or more, turnover of 100 crore or more, and having outstanding loans and debentures of 50 crore or more, shall have a minimum of 2 directors, and it is required in India for these certain classes of company. In the United Kingdom, the bar is set higher. At least half of the board, excluding the chair, should be non-executive, whom the board considers to be independent. And in the other 3 jurisdictions, Vietnam, Singapore, and Canada, the requirement broadly aligns at 1/3 or a majority, with Singapore and Canada specifically mandating that a majority of board should be independent, particularly when the chair is not independent. Then there is a higher requirement and a stricter provision. So this reflects how developed markets place a strong emphasis on the independent oversight at a board level, and how these differs from different developed and developing markets. Moving to tenure, here's a fun and interesting contrast that an Indian independent director can serve up to 5 consecutive years in one term. However, in contrast, the UK, Vietnam, Singapore, Canada allows up to 9 consecutive years. The one reason that often is cited in the articles, and we have experienced that this difference is because of the business and family linkages, which are more prevalent in India rather than any other country. And the shorter tenures, like for 5 years, help them preserve the independence and objectivity in comparison to the other countries where the family linkages are considerably lesser than India. So now let's talk about the reappointment, where we see some of the sharpest differences. In India, after completing the first 5-year consecutive term, an independent director may be reappointed for another term, but only after obtaining approval from majority of shareholders through a special resolution, like taking the 75% votes of the shareholders. In the United Kingdom, reappointment is generally prohibited beyond the prescribed tenure, that is 9 years. In Vietnam, they even take a stricter stance that independent directors are perpetually barred from re-election once their term ends. And in Singapore, reappointment requires a 2-tier approval mechanism. They need to take approval from first all the shareholders, and then those shareholders that are excluding from those who serve as a director or who are associated with the company. So first we have to take the approval from shareholders, and then from the shareholders minus those shareholders that are directors or associated with the company. So once the approval is obtained from both the levels, then we can appoint the independent director. We can reappoint the independent director. In Canada, reappointment as an independent director is not permitted once the tenure limits are reached. So a lot of them are same, but the intensity of prohibition and barring them from re-elections varies. And this ensures that how jurisdictions manage the balance between expertise, experience, and independence. So a person can have a very good experience, but if that limit is crossed, if the number of years are crossed, he cannot be reappointed as an independent director in that company. He can be appointed as an independent director in any other company. Moving forward, we have a regulation of senior independent directors. India does not formally recognize or regulate the concept of senior independent directors. However, all other jurisdictions on this slide do. In India, it is suggested to have a senior independent director, but it is not regulated by the regulations. A senior, but who is an senior independent director? Senior independent director typically acts as a sounding board for the chair, and he is a liaison between the management and the independent directors of the company. And he's also a point of contact for all the shareholders. When the usual communication channels are ineffective, then the person can reach out to the senior independent director to discuss or to give his point. As boards become more complex, independence also needs structure and not just presence. So this is one of the way of structuring, like having a lead independent director and then the other directors. Next we have is the membership of the committees. Finally, but last but not the least, across all jurisdictions, independent directors are mandatory to be the members of audit committee and the nomination and remuneration committee. Beyond and over that, they are commonly part of risk management committees or governance committees, ethics committees, stakeholder committees, and many more, like sustainability committee, corporate governance committee, all depending upon the jurisdiction. So this reinforces the fact that independent directors are positioned at the core of oversight, risk, and governance functions globally. Like there's no country which leaves behind the importance of the independent director. And appointments are no longer filling seats. They are about filling the capability gaps. Like nomination committees are acting less like recommendatory bodies and more like the risk filters. Like they remove the risk, they remove the people who are not fit for the company, and then they are further discussed in the board and the shareholders or stakeholders as well. Every appointment at this level is being valued through multiple lenses, and the question we are coming to is that is this a good addition? Like, is this the right addition for the company, for the risk we oversee? Like, is that person will be a fit? So if that person fulfills all these regulatory compliances, he can be appointed as an independent director. So now let's move what is probably the favorite part for everyone in the room, that is salary and perquisites of all the independent directors. After discussing roles, responsibilities, regulatory expectations, it is also important to understand how independent directors are compensated for the time, for the expertise, and the risks they bring to the board. While compensation is necessary to attract a high quality talent and high quality independent directors, it is also carefully regulated to ensure that there is not any conflict of interest, and the independence is not compromised, as someone just asked, Frank just asked, that if the incentive is also counted. So the real question becomes is what is allowed, what is restricted, and how does this differ globally? To answer that, let's move on to the next slide and see what exactly goes inside the pay package of an independent director. On this slide, we can see that the key components inside the package of the independent director compensation, and we will take them one by one. Starting with the sitting fees. Sitting fees are payments made to the independent directors for attending board meetings and the committee meetings. This is the most basic and universally accepted form of compensation. And as you can see, it is allowed in almost all jurisdictions that recognize the independent directors, including India, UK, Canada, US, Vietnam, because this is the basic right of the independent directors for their effort and expertise. And the logic here is simple, that the director should be compensated for the time and effort that they spent in the governance activities and to maintain the company like free of any conflicts. Next is performance based pay, which is quite interesting from a regulatory perspective. This form of compensation, typically a share in profits, restricted to a prescribed limit is allowed only in India. Outside India, performance-linked remuneration for independent directors is largely restricted or prohibited, as regulators believe that it may compromise their objectivity and independence. However, in India, it is only allowed up to a certain limit. So India stands out as an exception with strong safeguards built through their prescribed limits. Moving to the annual retainer fees, this is essentially a fixed annual or monthly payment made for serving on the board. You can think of it as a short-term salary like structure, but without any executive role or performance. This form of compensation is allowed in UK, Canada, Singapore, US, Vietnam, and it helps the boards to ensure their availability and commitment from the independent directors. Finally, we have reimbursement. This includes reasonable expenses incurred by the independent directors in the course of their duties, such as travel, accommodation, or say any related cost that can be reimbursed. This is allowed across all jurisdictions because they have done it during the course of their duty, and such expenses are fully reimbursed by the company, as these are not considered as remuneration but necessary business cost that the independent directors have occurred on their behalf. So to conclude, while independent directors are compensated for their contribution, their pay structure is carefully designed to balance fairness with independence. The global approach is clear: pay for the time, pay for the expertise, pay for the responsibility, but avoid any possible incentives that could influence the judgment of the independent directors, any monetary incentives. Yeah. So far we have discussed the tangible compensation, that is salary, fees, and reimbursements. But in reality, money is only the primary motivator, we can say, for the experienced independent director. And there are also some more some more invisible rewards that goes beyond the monetary compensation and that often matter more in the long term. Like first one is the reputational capital. First and foremost is reputational capital. Serving as an independent director significantly enhances the credibility and integrity and governance. It strengthens a person's personal credibility and brand, and it increases the acceptability from the regulators, investors, lenders, and other board. That credibility that these people put on you, they accept the acceptability that they expect from you, they give to you. In many cases, a strong independent directorship is viewed as a stamp of trust and competence. So this is what an independent director earns. The second invisible reward is access to high impact strategic decision making. Independent directors are directly involved in decisions such as capital allocation, mergers and acquisition, digital transformations, and ESG strategies as well. So these exposures lead to deep strategic learning and intellectual enrichment, which is difficult to gain in any other role. Like the decision making lies into the independent director, and this is like unbiased decision making, we can say, in these topmost strategic decisions of the company, like restructuring. Next, and the third is the influence without operational burden. So independent directors have the ability to shape ethics and long-term value creation without being responsible to any day-to-day executions, and they also have freedom to question, challenge, or maybe dissent without any reporting constraints, which is very critical for the effective governance. This will lead to they can use their independence in the company without any operational or day-to-day burdens like we have to report to this person. Next, and the fourth reward is the elite network capital. Boardrooms provide access to promoters, founders, global investors, regulators, industry leaders, and senior board of directors as well. So these relationships often lead to a long-term professional advisory and leadership opportunities beyond the board itself. Because when you are an independent director in the company, you connect with people, you speak with people, you discuss with people, and which creates a common long-term professional and and an opportunity for the leadership as well for the long-term time. Next and finally, we have leadership and public standing. Independent directors often gain visibility as a governance experts by their speaking engagements or panel discussions or media interactions. As Bhavya just said, that it is very important for independent directors to interrogate and disclose, and the academic and policy level involvement, taking strategic decisions as well. Over time, this positions all the independent directors as trusted voices in the corporate independence and in the public itself. So when we look at the full picture, the real value of an independent director often not lies in the paycheck only, but also in the reputation, the influence they make, the impact they make, and the long-term vision that they fulfill on the board. So with that, I will leave you with one question to reflect, like which of these rewards would you think will matter to you most in the long term and why? Like we all know that money is important, but other than money, what are the what of these rewards that you think that you will take as an independent director if you are appointed and if you are already an existing independent director?
Learners, this is actually interesting one.
If anybody wants to share their experience on how these invisible rewards have helped you in your journey. Networking. Yeah, networking is very important in today's time. Great reward. Dealing with real big picture problems. Yes. You gain so much, so much of intellectual while dealing with these real life problems. When you get into it, when you get into the practical problems, you get to know how to handle those, how to deal with them. So that is the greater learning. Okay, so can we move ahead? Yes, I think. Let's move ahead and start by looking at the overall journey of an independent director, right? From entering into the system to actually becoming effective on the board. Now we know that who is eligible to be an independent director. Let's also understand the process, like how we become an independent director in the company. So the process to appoint an independent director is generally similar in every jurisdictions depending upon the management structure. We have tried to cover majorly every step in this. All of these steps might be applicable and not applicable to your jurisdiction as per the applicability, but this is the broader steps that every jurisdictions follow. So the first is that the company has to source the potential candidates. This is typically done through a data bank of independent directors maintained by the authorized institute or association, or any external search consultants who specialize in board level recruitment. Like we can source the potential candidates from there. Crucially, the company must ensure that these candidates meet the prescribed eligibility criteria that we just discussed. Like we can source the individuals, but we have to make sure that they are eligible to become an independent director. Things like independence conditions, experience, qualifications, and absence of any disqualifications under any law for their jurisdictions. Next is that once the company identifies a suitable candidate, the next step is to obtain the formal declaration that we just discussed from them. The company will obtain your declaration confirming your eligibility and that you are not disqualified under the applicable law. This is not just a tick box exercise. When you sign a declaration, you are personally stating that you meet the independence and eligibility criteria. You will be liable for it if you don't agree, if you have not stated the right facts. And after collecting the declarations, the company convenes the committee meetings, typically the nomination and remuneration committee meeting, to review the profile and the disclosure that the person just provided for their appointment in the company. The committee evaluates the fit and proper criteria, skills required on the board, and the independence aspect and the synergy with the company, and they approves the appointment on their level and authorizes the necessary filings and documentation. Like they give a go ahead. So good boards just don't look at your CV, but they also look at what capability gap you will be able to fill on the board. Like as somebody just mentioned, like the area in which the company operates, like finance, risk, or technology, or ESG. And depending upon these requirements, appointment of the directors must be approved by the board and then by the members of the company. Once the shareholder approval and the board approval is obtained, the company must file specified forms and documents with the relevant regulatory authority within the prescribed timelines. This will typically include the filing will include the appointment of the director and the details of the director, their consents to act as a director. After all the approvals, the company issues a formal appointment letter to the independent director. This letter lays down the roles of the independent director, their duties, the term, the evaluation process, and the remuneration structures, of course. And finally, after appointment, the company conducts an induction and ensures and all the ongoing compliance, and they let the independent director come into the company, know everybody, know the operations, know the decisions that they are going to take. In addition, the company must also ensure that the director continues to meet the independence requirements over time and not just at the time of appointment. So this is how an independent director can be appointed. And now we have one of the most important tools for building the capacity, like we just discussed, the induction and the training that we have to provide, is the formal familiarization program for independent directors. And we will walk you through what a good familiarization program looks like and how companies typically implement it. If you are a part of the company, how you can implement it into your company. So in India, there's a defined regulatory framework that actually mandates training or familiarization of independent directors. Even in other countries, though well-governed companies still tend to run structured training or induction programs for their independent directors as a matter of good governance practice, because they recognize that an underperformed independent director cannot help you, or if the person does not know the company, they cannot take a better decision and an independent decision. So, what is the real reason for conducting these, and what are the real objectives of these familiarization program? First one, of course, to familiarize the independent director with the company's business, its strategy, its risk, its overall governance framework, so that they have the context of the company and they have a look on the company. They need to sit in the board and the share committee committee meeting, so they should be aware of the company's business and operations and their vision of the company. Second, to enable to provide effective oversight and to take informed decisions and to genuinely exercise independent judgment instead of just going along with whatever is presented to them. So it is important for them to take informed and unbiased decisions. Third, to make sure that they are aligned with the regulatory and fiduciary responsibility so that they understand what the law expects from them personally when they approve any decision or the financials or the strategy or any major transaction that is being happened in the company during their tenure. For example, if an independent director is new to a sector, a good familiarization program will walk them through the core products, the revenue model, the competitors, the regulatory risk, the key stakeholders, and then he will have a fair idea so that he can take a better and a strategic and an unbiased decision in any committee meeting or a board meeting. And they can even ask the relevant questions when they are in a meeting instead of spending just a year of catching up with the board members. Then we have the key focus areas. The first is the business and the structure. And this means that the independent directors should have a clear picture of the company's core operations, its group structure, its operating model, and the business and what business lines the company is in. How even the group company, they should also have the information about the group companies, like how the subsidiaries and joint ventures fit in, and how that complete ecosystem of that company and how that value is created and the ecosystem is created across the group. Next is the strategy and risk. Here, the focus of the company is on company's strategic priorities, the material risk that could affect those priorities, and the broader ESG considerations that are now a very much part of the board's agenda. So we have to consider the areas where the company is at the most of the risk, and we should take steps to how we can manage them or mitigate them. The third one is governance, which means like understanding the board's composition, the committee structure, the key governance policies, and everything that should be governed by an independent director unbiasedly. So they are familiarized with the governance structure of the company. They know which companies do what, who chairs them, what issues are being flowed up to the full board. So they have a fair idea. Next, and an important one is the financials, as the idea is not to teach them the basic accounting. Of course, an independent director must know that, but to help them and understand them the company's financial performance and how the capital is being deployed, like through an equity or debt, and how the company is planning its financial journey in the near future, and what are the main value drivers in that specific business, and how that vision will be achieved. And finally, we have the compliance. That means familiarizing with them the laws and the regulations and the overall compliance environment, so that they are aware of the regulatory landscape and requirements that the company in which the company is operating, and what is applicable to the company, and is that completely fulfilled and compliant. In terms of implementation, these programs are usually derived through structured sessions taken by the board or board level presentations, workshops, and sometimes briefing by the senior management only. And this will and now these are also given through the digital platform. So they can be provided to the independent directors through any of the mode, like offline or online. They are designed as continuous and evolving programs rather than just one time induction. Regular trainings are being taken because the business and the regulatory requirements and the risk environment are, of course, every time changing. So we have to take the regular familiarization program after a specific time, and the board's understanding should be to keep a pace with that, with the regulatory changes that is happening and with the other changing happening around in the world. So, with this, I just want to leave you with one thought to remember and reflect on. Like, independence today is not just about being eligible, it's about the judgment, the unbiasedness, and it's not just about you being present or you being compliant. It's about your participation, your confidence, your courage, and your vision to challenge the questions if you think that is not correct. And perhaps the most important shift is this, that the question no longer whether an independent director is independent or not. The question is how effective that independent director is and how well they have taken care of the company in that sense. So with this, I will leave to Bhavya to take the rest of the session.
Okay, in this section, we will see how independent directors are expected to serve as the primary and crucial safeguard against any misapplication of a related party transaction. So let's move to the next slide and let's see what is your role in the RPT oversight. More or less, we have discussed these points, but still, we thought let's go through it once again. So RPTs actually put independent directors into the spotlight because independent directors serve as the first and most important line of defense, as earlier I said, against the misuse of the company's resources and promoters' influence. So let's see how you can protect the interest of the minority shareholders and keep fairness uptight in the RPTs. So first, you should ensure there is an arm's length pricing and fairness, As an independent director, you should be asking a very simple question, but a powerful one. If we are doing this deal with a completely unrelated third party, what would the terms look similar? Then where's the so the actually that's where the market benchmarking or independent valuations or maybe comparable external data becomes the critical one. So they will help you to confirm the pricing and terms they are actually truly at arm's length basis or not. Then again, you should question the business rationale and necessity. You should test the commercial logic and strategic fit for each RPT to make sure it is genuine, it is helping the business, not just the price is looking fine. You should see the necessity in the business. So in the boardroom, the discussions should not stop at is this the fair pricing? It should also explore the questions like how this transaction is going to support our company's strategies or operations. So your role is not to block the related party transactions, but just to ensure that only those with the clear business purposes and fair terms should go ahead. Then uncovering the hidden conflicts and indirect interest. Independent directors must be sharp at uncovering hidden conflicts or indirect interest also. Sometimes the related party is obvious, like we know it's promoters, they are the related party, directors firm, group entity. They named are actually upfront. But the more serious cases are where the connection is indirect, maybe through some relative, which does not appear on the surface. Then, so your role is not just to read the declaration and move on, but to interrogate it, as earlier I mentioned. So, like, if is there anyone in the management or on the board or among their relatives or affiliates who might benefit unusually from this transaction? Then we have preventing fund diversion and profit sharing. Independent directors are expected to watch out for the situations where money and profits are quietly moved around within a group in a ways that that does not really help the company on whose board you are sitting. So even if it looks normal RPT transactions on the paper, so that's why your real role is just not to tick the box on each RPT in isolation, but to step back and connect the dots over the time and look for the overall pattern over several quarters maybe, and then use your judgment, independent judgment, I would say, to question the business rationale, test whether the terms are truly at arm's length basis, and step in early if you see the pattern. Then the most important role of the independent director is to protect the minority shareholders and the long-term value. Actually, protecting the minority shareholders and the long-term value is it's not just the fifth point of this list. It is really the outcome of everything we just have discussed, like questioning the business rationale, ensuring arm's length terms, uncovering the conflict of interest, and preventing fund diversion and profit shifting in related party transactions. So, learners, we have one quick warm up round for you. So, we have the questions and you need to answer. This is not a one word answer. You need to provide proper reasoning, maybe in a line. So, the first question is if a promoter's family entity is involved in a transaction, what should an independent director be careful about? Can we have the answer, learners? Reason for the transactions. Ensuring whether arm's length pricing is there. Okay. Next is transparency of funds. Okay. Next is when an RPT looks urgent and is pushed for a quick approval, what should an independent director do? Ask questions. Look at the details. Perfect answer. Ask for independent assessment. Yes. ID must watch for conflict of interest. Okay. Okay, that's for the first one. Look closely and ask questions. Yes, correct. Then, if pricing, valuation, or benchmarking is missing, what is the safe action an independent director can take? There's this pressure. Withhold vote until information is given. That's very nice. Correct answer. Don't be just in the room. Speak up. Yes, you should look for the pricing and valuation. Then fourth one, what is one way an independent director can protect minority shareholders during RPT approvals? This we just discussed. Learners, can you answer for the, yeah. Ensuring full disclosures. Okay. Seek indemnity from the RPT parties. Okay. Preventive fund divergence. Disclosures, independent assessment, and keep it on the radar. Okay. Not just part of the bundle. Okay. Can we have answer for the fifth question? If a promoter informally asks an independent director to support a transaction, what should the independent director rely on? Yes, perfect answer. It's in the best interest of the company or not. Strictly on the board papers, regulatory framework. Reply to the IDs at large. Okay. Sixth is why it is important to compare RPT pricing with the market rates. Can we have the answer for the sixth question? To make sure that they are not inflated or undervalued to create fair price. Yes, that's the perfect answer. Fiduciary duty, correct. One of the duties, independent judgment, which is the fiduciary duty. Then uncovering hidden conflicts and indirect interest. Verify the arm's length basis of the transaction to protect the company's interest. Okay. Learners, you have given, there are actually no right or wrong answers, but you have given almost actually 100% correct answers. We still have some suggested answers. You can go through it once when you will look into the PPT later. Okay, then we have the real life case studies. So this section actually brings everything together by showing how independent directors actually operate in the real world situations and what we can learn from those independent directors.
Anil, you have any question?
Yeah, just one quick question, Kirat and Bhavya. When we say that independent director need to ask for an independent assessment, what kind of an agencies typically do this independent assessment? Because I think the whole purpose of having an independent director that he is independent or she is independent, and they should be capable of doing an independent assessment. So if the independent director himself or herself is asking for an independent assessment, so how fair is it? And are there any agencies that can be deployed by the company to do that assessment?
Anil, if I would say if you are the expert of the finance, you can give the independent judgment on the finance part. But maybe on the board for technology, there is no independent director. So maybe in that case, you can ask for the independent assessments from the third parties. There are so many consultants in the market. You can choose the best consultant and then you can go for it. So it
So
is not
this is
compulsory.
okay.
Hmm.
So it's not compulsory, but fairly accepted by
Yes,
the
yes.
regulatory authorities like SEBI and all
Also,
these.
just to
It's
add
it's
to
a it's a case to yeah. Kirat, you were saying
I
something.
was just saying, like being an independent when company varies from each company. Like if I'm independent in one company, it is not necessary that I will be independent in other company as well. So one assessment cannot say that you are independent, but for each company, you can check if you're independent to that company itself. Like if you are not related to the promoters, if you don't hold any, so you can do that. Like for individual company, you can check your independence.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, learners, this is here actually we have tried to collate the key traits of the award-winning independent directors from all over the world, focusing on those who have created the real value for their organizations and stakeholders. So this is so you can go through the slide like one of the independent director had, they had moral courage and constructive dissent they have given. Then they have the trait of independent thinking, deep preparation and analytical rigor, then balanced challenge with the trust. Then we have long term value and stakeholders focus. These are the traits. So generally, independent directors should have. So you can check which of these traits you already feel natural about you, or and which one do you want to build further in the role as an independent director's journey.
And most of the them we have also discussed in during this course of
Yes,
session, that is courage, independent thinking, building trust,
long-term value.
sound commitment.
Yes.
So all of them we have covered as an eligibility and soft skills for that you should have for an independent director. But yes, this is the plus one.
But still, we thought we tried to collate this for you. So, Yoshida, you can move to the next slide. Okay, so this is an case study. So this slide is actually about the major success story where independent directors really proved their value in a large IT company when under the intense public and regulatory scrutiny. So in this case, the company received anonymous whistleblower complaints around 2019 alleging ethical lapses and accounting irregularities, and even questioning the aspects of the CEO's personal matters like his payments, travels, bonuses. So these complaints were serious enough that SEBI and US SEC were requested to investigate, and the founders themselves publicly raised concerns about corporate governance, which meant both reputation and investor confidence were at risk. So here the audit committee, led by the independent director, stepped in and took direct charge of the situation instead of leaving it to the management to handle internally. They appointed independent external legal and forensic experts to conduct the investigation. So, like Anil, this case study just answered your question, and then they made sure that the management had no influence over the scope, process, or findings of that inquiry. So, throughout, they followed due processes and ensured timely regulatory disclosures rather than trying to tone down or delay the information going to the regulators and investors. So, what was the result? The result was that after this independent investigation, the key allegations were found to be unsubstantiated, and the auditors issued an unmodified audit opinion for that period, which is strong signal of comfort on the financial statements. Governance, credibility, and investor trust, which had been shaken, were largely restored. And this case is now globally cited as a positive example of how a genuinely independent board and audit committee should behave in a crisis.
So
So
there
the
is some, sorry, interfering here. There is some Indian case also, which is Ashni Grover, Bharat Pay CEO. So I think he is also has gone through similar charges. and he really had to get down from the post after that, after the inquiry.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Seema, for giving such insight. So, what was the key learning from this case study? It's actually simple, but again powerful. Independent directors add maximum value in time of the crisis when they stand firm on the processes, evidences, and transparency. So, learners, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the session. And next will be the sixth session, the last one. And after that, we'll be having one quick revision session plus the assessment part. You'll be having the assessment for this program. We're going to discuss that in the seventh session after this session.
Thank you, Bhavya. Thank you, Kirat.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.